Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a regular meeting of the El Centro City Council. You will note the absence of Mr. Solomon. He will be coming a tad late. However, we do have a quorum, so we will start our meeting in light of that so that we do not detain you who may have other scheduled events you wish to attend. At this time, we will have roll call.
Mayor Sanders.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Solomon. Absent. Councilmember Villegas Walker. Absent. Councilmember Silva.
Present.
Councilmember Jackson.
Here.
We had a closed session today. It started at 11:30 and ended about 1:20. We will have, first we will have our pledge, our invocation, and then we will have a report from our city attorney in our closed session. Our pledge will be by Councilmember Silva. Yours truly will provide the invocation. Will you stand, please?
Please join me saluting our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We just ask those who can to remain standing. Our Heavenly Father, we've come this evening with our hearts humbled and our heads bowed. We bow in humble submission. We ask a special intervention on your part, Lord, and provide us the divine guidance that we will need in order to handle the issues that are so important for this community. We ask that you would bless each person in the sound of my voice, individually and collectively. Lord, we would be remiss if we did not ask you a special blessing on the men and women who are on the battlefield. For those who have paid the ultimate price, we ask that you would send the Comforter to their families. Then, Lord, when we have done all that you've assigned our hands to do, we ask for a special place in your kingdom. Amen.
Mayor, can you turn the volume up on
Thank you. City Attorney will provide a report on our closed session.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On a motion by Councilmember Solomon, second by Councilmember Jackson, the City Council met in closed session at 11:39 a.m. pursuant to the closed session statement posted with the agenda. Mayor Sanders and Councilmembers Solomon and Jackson were present. Councilmembers Silva and Villegas Walker were absent. Excuse me. A report was given to Council on the anticipated litigation item, and Public Works Director / City Engineer Terry Hagan was present. There is no action to report, but direction was given to staff. Council met with its labor relations negotiators, City Manager Ruben Duran and Human Resources Director Terry Brownlee, concerning labor matters. There is no action to report, but direction was given to staff. Excuse me. There were two added items to closed session as the need to take action arose after the agenda had been posted. Moved by Councilmember Jackson, seconded by Councilmember Solomon, to add the anticipated litigation items to the closed session agenda. Motion carried 3-0 with Councilmembers Silva and Villegas Walker absent. With respect to the first added item, Economic Development Director Marcela Piedra and Finance Director Leticia Salcido were present. There is no action to report, but direction was given to staff. With respect to the second added item, Economic Development Director Marcela Piedra, Community Development Specialist Stacy Cox, and Public Works Director / City Engineer Terry Hagan were present. The item was for information only with no action to report. The council did take a break during closed session from 12:15 p.m. until 12:21 p.m. and closed session concluded at 1:14 p.m. And that concludes my report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I hope now that I've been noticed that I need to speak a little more loudly and perhaps a little more clear. Am I able to be heard in the rear of the room? If you can hear me, just raise your hand. Thank you. This is a public meeting. Any person wishing to address the City Council, the successor agency to the RDA, and housing agency is asked to complete a blue speaker slip and submit to the City Clerk prior to the start of the meeting. When the item is announced and your name is called by the Mayor, please come forward to the microphone, address yourself to the City Council, and unless the Mayor extends the time, there is a 3-minute time limit for each public presentation. If you wish to address the City Council on any subject matter within the Council's jurisdiction that is not listed on this agenda, you may do so during the public comment portion of the agenda. Any information provided on the speaker slip will be a public record. There are no presentations by the mayor, but we do have several public comments, and they will first be presented by Mr. Tom Curtis, President of the Downtown Business Improvement District. Mr. Curtis? Oh, someone else is going to make the presentation on his behalf. All right.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Santos Vasquez, Treasurer of Downtown. I'm here for Mr. Curtis. He's out of town right now. I'm here just to read a letter that was sent through an email to all the council members. Dear council members, during the last publicly noticed hearing to reestablish the bid, staff recommended to council members a third option of placing the bid on hold for 1 year. Even though the finding of a majority protest by the City Council, as stated in Section 36525A, did not occur, during this publicly noticed hearing, Section 36503 does state, however, that any provision of this part which conflicts with any other provision of law shall prevail over the other provision of law, thereby raising the requirements of Section 36504, which states, if any provision is held invalid, the assessments shall be reimposed in identical amount upon the same businesses as a matter of law. Thus, absent reimposed fee, membership is subsequently not reimposed, as discussed during our June 19th presentation. If any member shall cease to be such, and it is interest he shall have in and or to the property, assets, and privileges of the corporation shall cease and revert to the corporation, and such cessation of membership shall operate as a release of assignment to the corporation of all rights, title, and interests of such members in and to property, assets, privileges of the corporation, provided, however, that any cessation of membership shall not affect any independentness of the corporation to such member. El Centro Downtown Inc. by laws Article 9, Section 2. Additionally, place on hold for 1 year not only created a cessation of membership, which caused all property, assets, privileges to revert to the corporation, but Section 36551B also appears compromised, in that the disestablishment occurs before an assessment is levied for the fiscal year. The method and basis that was used to calculate the assessments levied in the immediate prior fiscal year shall be used to calculate the amount of any refund, of which no assessment fees were levied during the immediate prior fiscal year. Only a majority of board members voluntarily remained current. Conclusion. It is with deep regret that we inform to our decision to comply with ECDI Articles of Incorporation Section 4C, which states, on the winding up of dissolutions of this corporation after paying or adequately providing for all debts, obligations, and liabilities of the corporation, the remaining assets of this corporation shall be distributed to the City of El Centro, Council of Imperial, State of California, to promote the downtown area of El Centro. This 30-day notice of intent to dissolve ECDI is to establish a time frame of which to compile and deliver remaining revenues and assets to the location chosen by the City Council members. We are also giving 30-day notice to terminate that administrative agreement pursuant to Section 9A on page 6 of the Agreements of Administrative Services with the City of El Centro, dated July 16, 2008. Please feel free to contact me at 760-455-3512 if we can be of further assistance. Best regards, Tom Curtis.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I don't know if any council member have any questions for you at this time, or
they won't really be for me.
well, we will have.
Yeah.
Thank you. We will note the phone number that you provided to reach Mr. Curtis. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, if we may have a copy of that, because provide it to the clerk, and then she can copy it later and distribute it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. We now will hear the annual report from the IBEDC. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Honorable council members, Mr. Duran. Tim Kelly, President and CEO of the Imperial Valley Economic Development Corporation. Here to give an annual report of our activities for the last year. And I'd like to start off by reminding you that we are a private corporation, that our financing comes from the private sector as well as public sector. We have contracts with cities throughout the Imperial County, County of Imperial, the Imperial Irrigation District, 145 private sector investors. In addition to that, we have grants with the USDA, actually 2 grants that we're administering at this time. And as of yesterday, we're now administering the RCND, the Regional Resource Development Program for Imperial County, and also Coachella Valley and parts of San Bernardino County. I just wanted to start off by giving an idea.
I'm going to share with you, Mr. Kelly, because of the length of this, we will provide you additional time to make this presentation.
I can talk really fast.
No, we will provide you some additional time.
Okay. Just want to give you an idea, because our main role is the external marketing for the region, so I spend a lot of time outside the region as well as my staff, and these are some of the trade shows that we attend. And I want to let you know that we've positioned ourselves that when we attend a trade show, we're really have been able to put ourselves at front and center at these events. In addition to that, we also participate with an organization called Team California, which I am the president of, and that's a statewide marketing organization, which comes with it the backing of the Governor's Office of Economic Development. So that's been very beneficial, allows us to leverage our resources. Trade shows usually cost about $3,500 to $5,000. We're able to get a lot more people in and get a better exposure than we would acting individually, and that's been very beneficial. You can see that my staff, we also do internal marketing, and just a couple things I wanted to bring up is our Renewable Energy Conference that we held last year had about 600 people attending, of which 3/4 were outside the county, and many of those stayed in hotels here in El Centro. As a matter of fact, many people had to stay in Yuma and Coachella Valley because they were not able to get hotel rooms here in the Imperial County. Shows you not only the effect that our conference has, but how strong the hotel industry is in the Imperial Valley. In addition to that, we had our annual dinner, which I think many of you attended, which we had about 350 people attend, many from the outside the Imperial County also. And I think that that was a very nice venue and a good opportunity to show us some of the successes we've had throughout the years. Toward the bottom, you see the U.S. and Foreign Commercial Service Trade Mission. First time we've attended that event in Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Monterrey, 3 shows in 3 days. And just today we had 1 company, and we have 5 more that will be coming to the Imperial Valley. 1 that was here today, and 5 more that will be coming in September, just from that trade show alone. Companies that are from Mexico that want to do business and open operations here in the Imperial County. So that's a real success. In addition to Intersolar Europe and Intersolar North America, which I just returned from this week. We have in front of you the Abundant Opportunities magazine, which we put out, and just last night we had a company in town, a Fortune 500 company, in which we had some members of the community as well as 5 members from that organization. And I want to introduce Sean Wilcock, who handles our business services for IVDC. If you could stand, Sean. You recall that 2 years ago, Mrs. Walker, Villegas Walker, asked me what we're doing for the small businesses. Well, one of the things we're doing is creating marketing opportunities, and in addition to that, we are doing procurement processes, which Sean actually, as we bring in a new company in, then we introduce them to companies. We actually take them, interview companies, and bring them contracts for opportunities, and I'll show you some information about that. But last night at the meeting, as we went through this, as they asked questions, we were able to address all the questions just in this magazine, these magazines alone. So it's been very helpful to us, very expensive for us to print, but we found that in the marketing efforts it's been very beneficial, because who's telling our story except us? And remember the negative publicity that we've had. We've been able to not only put a positive light, but the real story about our opportunities. So this is the business development report, new companies that are looking at the Imperial County that are we've been doing a site selection for, and quite a few jobs that will be created when we land these companies. 2 of them have already began operations here in the Imperial County, and we'll be employing about 150 employees in the next year. And I'll be able to talk about that later, but still trying to keep it quiet at this point. In addition to that, the business development. Yeah.
Go back one slide.
Sure.
Are you able to provide a status report as to where some of those projects might be in terms of the development?
Yeah, a lot of them are in, well, let's put it this way. A lot of the companies that are coming to the Imperial Valley are opening up offices in the city of El Centro, and they've already done that. Pattern Energy, 8-Minute Energy, LS Power, and others that we've been operating. Not to mention IVDC, which has their office in El Centro also. So I think those are some of the companies that we've brought to the Imperial Valley, opened offices here. There's several more that we've helped in Calexico, in Imperial, in Brawley, and in Hopeville. And we hope to be able to get some other companies in other locations.
No, but I was trying to get at are some of those companies, and I know that you can't disclose names many times, but are they more than just the exploration phase?
No, these companies are all in the process of siting locations and beginning operations probably in the next year.
Okay.
And these are a few more that we're just beginning that process. As a matter of fact, LGX, I won't go into it, but it's going to probably be in the city of Imperial and Hopeville. But these are several of the companies that we're working with and doing site selection for them right now. Business Services Report, these are some of the companies that these are services that we've provided. We've assisted them in ETP funding, enterprise zone referrals, which would be in Calexico and Brawley and surrounding areas, not to mention their expansions such as Cal Energy, Energy Source, and Holly Sugars, and we have several more. Barbara Worth was another expansion of the enterprise zone from Calexico. And then CMTC is a contract that we got with the Small Business Administration. So we've actually been assisting these companies and providing them a free service by the Department of Commerce to help them become more efficient and stay in business. So that's one of the new programs that we've been working with for the last year. Also, these are the procurement companies we've been working with. So with these companies, we've been able to introduce them to local companies here in the Imperial Valley and assist them in making sure that they hire locally. And that's what our goal is to help local companies be able to benefit. Now,
Mr.
these are companies...
Tim,
yeah.
Mr. Solomon has a question for you.
Sure,
if you
Ben.
would pause it this time. Mr. Solomon?
One of the things that doesn't seem to get out enough is the fact that even though you had mentioned a moment ago about the businesses might be opening in Imperial and Holtville, just because they open up in those cities doesn't mean that all the employees will be from those cities.
That's correct.
They have an opportunity to live anywhere in the valley and be able to get a job there. So I thought you might want to expand on that just a little so people understand.
Well, I totally agree. I think even if you look at city staff that work here in the city of El Centro, many of them live in other cities. My office is in El Centro. I have staff that live in Brawley. I live in Brawley. We have staff that live in Imperial, staff that live in Calexico. And so we travel throughout the county. If that wasn't the case, we wouldn't need freeways here in Imperial County. So I think that that's really beneficial. When a company opens up, no matter where it is in Imperial County, we all benefit. And then what we've been trying to do is link those companies with existing businesses so they can prosper also. So it's not just the employees that are prospering, but local businesses. And what we found is that as new companies come to the Imperial Valley, they're not aware of what's available. We've got some very good companies here. And so we want to introduce them to those companies. Matter of fact, Desert Securities is one of those companies that we've actually assisted in many cases, as well as Imperial Valley College, and have helped them with grants and introducing new programs to them. So I think that that's an example of how we're trying to expand that. But I think this slide just gives you an idea with our procurement activities. These are the companies that we've assisted and helped them to get contracts with new companies that are coming to the Imperial Valley. And we specifically went out to these companies, we identified them, interviewed them, sat down and asked what type of services they can provide, and then put a procurement list together for new businesses that are operating here in the Imperial County. So somebody that's coming from the outside, like Pattern Energy or LS or 8-Minute Energy, don't really have an idea what's available. So we've been able to put a list together of those companies and let them know what their expertise is, and that's been very beneficial.
Haven't you found that sometimes it takes maybe 2 or 3 years before something comes to really a plus for us? And I'm thinking about when we went over to China, and next thing you knew, they were, can't think of the company.
YK America?
YK America.
Yes, YK America. Now they own out there where Target is. They own over where the new,
We got the Heber Center in Heber, Heber Road, and then also in Imperial. The new hotel that's being built, those three were all foreign direct investment from China, which I was assisting in marketing, as well as you, Mr. Solomon, and I think Ephraim also, is that correct? No?
no, Ms. Walker.
Ms. Walker and Marcella also. I think those are successes that the city should be very proud of, but in addition to that, it was not only the investment, but also the USDA and the EDA that assisted in the grants that helped those projects get going, and the staff of the city of El Centro as well.
I just want to make sure that that information got out.
Well, I'd like to say it was 3 years, best case scenario. But the reality is, through this recession, we've been very fortunate. We've had a lot of businesses open up and a lot of new industry, and probably more than most counties. But projects that should have taken 3 years are taking 5 years, and we're starting to see the benefits of that today. They just approved another project at the Imperial Irrigation District Board meeting today, which will be over $1 billion investment to this community. But once again, I just want to report that these are all El Centro companies, small businesses that we've been assisting, and as you can see, we've got 2 pages of those. And these are people that have been able to take advantage of new projects coming in the Imperial Valley. As a matter of fact, the Mesquite Regional Landfill just began their first delivery today of blades for the turbines that will go to Pattern Energy. We've been working with Union Pacific, LA Sanitation, and others, Blackner Energy on that project for several months. I just want to mention a couple of the organizations that we participate in. Team California, which I'm the president of. CalEd, I'm on the board of directors. World Trade Center, board of directors. Clean Tech San Diego, board of directors. Workforce Development Board, board of directors. District Export Council, board of directors. And then we also attend meetings with Caltrans Small Business Supplier Council. So we're doing the same thing and trying to help businesses here in the Imperial Valley link them up with projects that are being done by Caltrans. And that's never been done before. So we think we'll see a real benefit from that. We'll be holding a event in November that for businesses here in the Imperial Valley to link them up with projects with Caltrans and other government entities. And then we attend the cargo group meeting at the border on a regular basis, Association for Unmanned Vehicles, and the Southern Low Desert RC&D. Let's see, I wanted to mention something about that. We'll be holding another event for international trade, which will be held here in the Imperial Valley with support from the U.S. Commercial Service. The Association of Unmanned Vehicles, you recall that we look at industry clusters, agribusiness, renewable energy, also international trade and logistics, foreign direct investment, manufacturing, and we started a new industry cluster group which is aerospace. And so the Association of Unmanned Vehicles, this is also a group that will assist with the Joint Strike Fighter program. But we're not focusing on the Joint Strike Fighter, we're focusing on everything that has to do with aerospace, from cargo airports, unmanned vehicles, testing of aviation, manufacturing of planes. We probably have about 5 companies we're working with. I think through our work that'll also benefit the activities that are occurring with the Joint Strike Fighter Task Force. So I think that's an example of how we can work together on that. Wanted to finally mention, I'd like to congratulate the City of El Centro this last year. Received one of the top awards by the state of California for a program which I really believe in, which is visiting the businesses here. It's a great example. In addition to that, there were 2 other awards for the Imperial Valley. One was for Community Valley Bank, which we assisted in. In addition to that, IVDC won the Grand Prize Award for Business Services programs for the entire state of California, and the Partnership Award with Community Valley Bank. So I just wanted to bring that up, that the Imperial Valley, there was basically three top awards, and we received 4 top awards. We received 3 of those and the grand prize from the Imperial Valley. So we're getting ourselves on the map, not only through our efforts at IVDC, but through our partner organizations such as El Centro, and we're being recognized up and down the state. So I want to congratulate you for that, and I look forward to working more with you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I thank you, Mayor, for the extra time.
Extra time. Thank you so much, Mr. Kelly. We are now prepared to entertain a motion for our consent agenda. Well, the consent agenda items are approved by one motion. Council members or members of the public may pull consent items to be considered separately or at a time designated by the mayor. Does anyone wish to pull any of the items?
Move to approve items 3 through 12.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Jackson, second by Silver. Ballot, please.
Motion carries 4-0.
Ready for our first public hearing. Mrs. Piedra, are you ready? Are you getting set up? Okay. This is a public hearing to solicit input, or to solicit public input on the city's annual program income report for the Community Development Block Grant programs under the State of California's Department of Housing and Community Development, and request for approval to submit the city's annual program income report for the state CDBG program income. Its presentation will be made by Mrs. Piedra.
Yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Here before you to present this report, which is required by the State of California Department of Housing and Community Development. It is an annual report that we need to do before the public. And I have provided a copy of the PowerPoint, which is not a long presentation, but it does indicate the projects that are being funded currently with our program income that's generated through the Community Development Block Grant program. It's worth mentioning that the actual allocation of projects and selection of projects is done through our regular process of annual action plan process that we follow through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. However, because the program income that we receive is generated from grants that the city received when it was a non-entitlement community, we are still required to follow this process. In the period of time that we're covering during this report is basically from July 1, 2011 to June 30th of 2012. And based on this year, we received in program income $57,965. The actual projects that we have selected for funding from our program income are basically our sports pavilion project, and this matrix shows the amount of money that is committed for the projects included on this slide, and it also shows what we have previously expended from this funding source, and also specifically what we have expended during the fiscal year that we are reporting to the state. You will see that for the sports pavilion project, we have actually committed from our program income $664,728, and we have expended, as you know, this is an ongoing project that we're working on, $275,907, and we have a remaining balance to spend on this project of $388,821. For the El Dorado Colonia, this was to supplement the grant that we received from the state. We set aside $50,000. We haven't taken any specific action with respect to this project. As you are aware, the state unfortunately disencumbered the $800,000 grant that we had submitted for this project, and it's been disencumbered. So when we start our next annual action plan process, we would reconsider what we're going to do with this money that has been set aside for this area. In terms of sidewalk improvements, as you know, we have done extensive work within our city for sidewalk improvements. We committed $171,000. We have expended $125,475 for the specific fiscal year we're reporting on, $16,253, and we do have a remaining balance for this project. Under the emergency earthquake, as you know, when we had the earthquake, we set aside $100,000, but we ended up expending $62,985. We do have a balance available of $37,015, which, again, when we start our annual action plan process, we would reallocate those funds for an eligible project. We also fund our fair housing activities from our program income, and we have committed $26,400. We have previously expended $13,100. During the particular fiscal year we're reporting, we expended $10,624, and giving us a remaining balance of $2,676. The final activity that we also fund from our program income is program administration, which basically covers staff time to work on these various projects, and also the necessary reporting to the state on these open contracts in our program income fund. We committed $10,072, and we actually expended 100% of those funds. So for this fiscal year, we have actually expended a total of $36,949, and we do have a balance of $507,784. Obviously, the Sports Pavilion project is an ongoing project, which we anticipate using our funds. However, for the remaining balances that you see here, again, those are going to be reprogrammed or brought to you for recommendation on other eligible projects when we start our annual action plan process, which should be by the end of this year. I do want to point out that on the report that's attached to your council summary report, there is a mistake on the section 4, which talks about the total annual activity funds expended for this year. This is a template that we use from the state, and for whatever reason, it's picking up a number from only one of our projects. So we have to work with the state because it is a form they generate, so that will be corrected. So if the action is that we are going to be submitting this report subject to revision by staff. And this concludes my presentation. If there's any specific questions, I can answer those. This is a public hearing, so we need to open the public hearing.
Let's see if there's any questions for you first. Are there any questions for Mrs. Piedra before we open the public? Mr. Silva?
Ms. Piedra, what specifically is the error on section 4 of the report that we have?
If you see the total amount there for activity funds is showing as $229,722, but our actual expenditures for this fiscal year, again, this is an annual report for the fiscal year 2011-12, is actually 36. So it seems like it's picking up maybe the expenses for this project. So we need to correct it, okay. And we have found that mistake.
Any additional questions for Ms. Piedra?
I have one.
Mr. Jackson?
Marcella, on the $50,000 that we had encumbered for the El Dorado Colonia, what is that restricted funds? What can we reallocate that for?
Basically, what we would do is any other eligible activity under the CDBG program, either public services, sidewalk improvements, or any eligible project can be considered for funding as long as it meets the CDBG and the national objective requirement.
So would that cover such public agencies like IBEDC?
It would fall under the public services. So when we start our procurement, our solicitation for request for proposals under CDBG, we can certainly look at the possibility of seeing if an agency like that would be eligible.
And I know that we were looking for the money. I know we kind of found out under unencumbered money for the Joint Strike Fighter, but we could also utilize these funds.
The only requirement is that it has to be a nonprofit agency. I don't know how the agency is set up. I believe it's a for-profit agency, if I'm not mistaken, but we can double check that. But any agency that receives these types of funds has to be a nonprofit.
Yeah, and so for the clarification, Council, there is a process that you open up for the public service, for those public contracts?
For the solicitation of projects and programs, we started during the month of November. Usually, right. Every year we start that.
And so that'll be advertised, and
yes, we do
anyone. Then there's a vetting process to determine that they are eligible under the guidelines. These are federal HUD dollars, and so through that process, we'll determine if there's an eligible project, and then it finally comes to Council. As you saw last year, or may have seen, there's always more subscription than there is funds, so we go through that process and bring you the eligible organizations.
And the only reason I bring that up is because, speaking especially today with our presentation from IVDC, I see a great benefit from that organization, especially to the city of El Centro. And when my time on the Workforce Development Board, I've dealt with a lot of unemployment numbers and workforce needs. IVDC is at the forefront of all that, and I'd like to see us try to do something more for that agency. I know that we are the city seat, and I feel like we're not paying our fair share to that organization for the amount of work and the amount of benefit that the city gets from that organization. So I'd sure like to have staff take a look at that and see if there's something we can do more for them, seeing now that we have this money that we have to reallocate.
Yeah. We would certainly encourage any organization during the application process to do that, and that's how we wind up with them. So we do a solicitation on that.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Mrs. Feather, before you leave the podium, would you mind expanding on the emergency earthquake funds, that $100,000? Was a portion of that used to assist families, or?
Yes, actually,
That's-
as you
I
may
think that's
recall, after the earthquake was experienced here in our county, there was an emergency or a need to provide rental assistance and also food vouchers, which were eligible under the program, to those individuals who were affected by the earthquake. And primarily it was families whose mobile homes were impacted. And as you may recall, we also created a companion program to actually rehabilitate those mobile homes that were affected. So the money that you see there was actually expended to provide assistance in terms of them finding temporary housing and also food vouchers.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
This is a public hearing, ladies and gentlemen. Anyone wishing to come forward to speak to either side of this issue, you may do so at this time. It's a public hearing and it's now open. Anyone wishing to speak to this issue on either side, either in favor or against, you have the opportunity now to come forward. Okay, seeing no one come forward, the public hearing is closed. Now I'll return back to council. What's the pleasure of the body?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move that we approve the submittal of the city's annual program income report for state CDBG program income.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Silva, second by Jackson. Are you ready for ballot, please?
Motion carries 4-0.
And all of that, Mrs. Feather, will be taken into consideration, the comments made by my colleagues as to when we're ready to ask individuals to submit their application for this, we'll look that over very carefully.
That's correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I think we're finished with that one. We're moving on. We're moving over to item 14. It's a public hearing to consider CRNR's request for an annual rate adjustment for solid waste and recycling. Presentation will be made by Terry Hagan, Director of our Public Works Department.
But they're not changing the report that she presented. That's a statement report. That's wrong. It's computer generated, so she can't spell it.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and council members. Just first initially review the contract services provided by CRNR. The residential service is a 3-cart system: trash, recyclables, and green waste. We have 4 quarterly drop-off events for the residents. They also have, each resident has 3 bulky item collections they can do per year. Simply call and push the item out to the curb and they'd be picked up. We have curbside used oil collection, where you have basically a drain pan that's provided, and you can drain your oil into that and then pick that up and give you an empty one. They have discarded item collection in the downtown alleys, and we now have street sweeping services by CRNR. CRNR is locally operated in the city, and so residents have the opportunity to go over to their facility and drop off their waste during the week if they want to, during working hours. There's a compost giveaway event that they conduct, and they collect the city's facilities, the trash, for free, and collection of waste and recyclables from city-sponsored events. Our initial contract with CRNR was started on March 20th, 2007. Had an initial rate of $15.99. This is the residential rate, monthly rate. That rate continued through June 30th of 2008. Then we had our first rate increase, went to $16.87. And then in 2 years later, we had the next rate increase, 1761. And then in 2011, we had the next rate increase, but we made some changes in the contract. We added free street sweeping. We extended the contract, and we also limited the maximum amount the rate could increase or decrease to 4%. And this year, the rate request is to an actual reduction from 1831 to 1815 in residential rates, and the roll-off rate increases.
Restate that. Restate that last sentence.
We have a rate reduction this year for residential rates from 1831 to 1815, and then the roll-off rate, there's a little over a 3% increase in that due to fuel costs.
Okay.
And I'll get to those numbers. CR&R provides Prop 218 indemnification to the city. The rate adjustment analysis is based on these 5 factors. There's fuel, indices, equipment, labor, disposal, and insurance. What's being proposed here is almost a 1% reduction in the residential rate, 16-cent reduction, and then the roll-off box service is 3.9% increase to 53.52. Now the residential rate is based on this. It's a combined cost of the tipping fee and the Yuma tipping fee at the landfill there in Yuma is $27.50, and then the transportation cost is $20.67 for a total of $48.17. Oops, excuse me here. Okay, these are the proposed rate changes. On the left here, you have the current rates as you go down, and as you go down this is the new proposed rate reduction, and all these numbers here. So these are all reduced rates being proposed. Likewise, the upper portion here is the current rates for the bin and commercial carts, and here are the proposed new rates which are reduced. And the rate reductions continue down here until here, and here you have the roll-off boxes, and this is where you have the 3.9% increase.
Terry?
Now, in comparing, I've got a slide.
Terry, there's a question for you.
Yes.
Mr. Jackson has a question.
Regarding the roll-off, is that increase based only on the fuel? The extra
It's
fuel?
primarily the fuel. It's other indices increased, but the fuel went up 19%, the fuel charge. And it's, I believe it's in your report, the detailed,
Yeah, I'm trying
the
to.
5 indices.
I guess my question is why does it affect the roll-off but doesn't affect the residential?
The residential, because we've switched landfills, a portion of the trash that's being hauled, I believe about a third of it is going to Yuma. There's a reduction in cost
Yes.
because the tipping fee is greatly reduced compared to the Allied landfill.
If I may, if had that not occurred, you would have seen an increase because of fuel and everything else, but there was a decrease in cost in the Yuma landfill, so that's why it offset it.
So basically the roll-off waste is still going to the Allied
No.
landfill?
It is not as,
Going to
I'm not
Yuma.
sure on that one, you got to
I'm not
respond.
sure on that either.
Of why the roll-off is higher than the,
Dean, is the roll-off going to
Well,
Allied
if
landfill?
we want Mr. Ruffins to come up, have him come forward and speak to the mic, because we were not able to hear him from 4 rows back. We're not able to hear you, Mr. Ruffins. Please come
Dean, would you
forward.
please come up?
The answer was yes. It's
Well, the
going to
answer is
Allied
yes?
landfill.
So it's
Okay.
going to Allied, and that's why the fee is...
Right. The other trash is gone through a process where they separate it, pull out the recyclables, and then haul it to Yuma.
Okay, thank you.
So this is a comparison with the other rates within Imperial County here. You've got the rate here, the proposed reduced rate here. You've got the franchise fees paid here. You've got Holtville, Calipatria, Heber, Westmoreland in the unincorporated county area. And you've got the averages down here. Except for Holtville, the El Centro rate is below all these others. and we're below the average. And the bin rate, the first week, we're slightly above the average, and second, for 2-week service, you're slightly below the average. Any questions?
Yeah, Terry, can you go back one slide here?
Sure.
And I'm sorry, when I called you earlier and I asked for the comparisons, I should have thought about asking you also to provide some numbers by other communities in the valley that may have a contract with Allied, and how does those rate compare to Calexico, Imperial, or other communities? Do you have a sense of that?
I don't have those numbers with me, no.
No.
Are there any additional questions at this time for Mr. Hagan? Seems like there's no questions at this time, but we will open up the public hearing. I do have one slip. So this is a public hearing. If you wish to come before the council, it says that Mr. Haas, is it?
Hello, council members. My name's Eric Oz. I would like to just encourage the council to not encourage any increases whatsoever on the citizens of this community, roll-off, commercial, or any other at this point. I also encourage the council to become a little bit more in depth with some of the numbers that are being used in justifying any increase in costs. As a small community, we need to be aware of the franchise agreements that we make with any corporation and how they spend their money in our community and give back. Because when we have outside companies come to our communities, we need to encourage them and keep a watchful eye on them on what they give back to our communities. Not just jobs, but the overall monies that they give back. So in granting any long-term agreements, and that's one of the things that just came up when Mr. Hagan was talking, how long is this agreement for? We never talk about how long these durations are. We just talk about the incremental rate at this time. And that's something that I would like to have expounded upon at this time.
Yes, is there anything else you want an answer to that, and then you have additional questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Hagan, would you please assist this gentleman with an answer to that question?
Sure. In your packet there, you have the original request by CR&R, and if you notice, it was actually for an increase. We use HF&H to review these numbers, go through, renegotiate, and we actually ended up with a decrease for the residential rates. So these numbers are gone over very carefully, these indices and cost changes, and so we've actually ended up with a decrease for residential. As far as the contract length, I believe it's is up in 2027. I believe that's the length of the contract.
And I think we would like to speak to the issue about what does CR&R give back. Well, one of the areas, and he was questioning whether, but not just jobs, but that is a significant component, is the local hires. Another area is that they are sponsors of many of our activities that we do, especially in the downtown area, and some of the other programs that we have going on. So in that regard, we have found that CR&R have been a good corporate citizen, have been very participatory in a lot of our activities. If you would like to expand on that, either Mr. Duran or Mr. Hagan.
Or possibly Dean.
Actually, Dean, would you come to the microphone, please?
Mr. Ruffich, would you mind telling us the number of employees, how many of them are local? I think they all are local.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members
thank
of the
you.
council. If I could do a little introduction first, if you don't mind.
I would.
It's a pleasure to be here again. I think this is the 5th or 6th year I've been in front of you and doing a little presentation. I'd like to introduce two key members of our staff here. Our general manager, Dan Druick, is here tonight. He handles the operations in Imperial County. And also with me tonight is Mr. Edward Legaspi, who's a sales representative at the South Yuma County Landfill, and also our new governmental liaison for Imperial County. So those gentlemen are here tonight to support what's going on. CR&R, well, first of all, to answer your question, Madam Mayor, I apologize. We have given back, I believe, quite a bit to the community. Not only hires, but sponsorships, but we're also a gold member of the Chamber of Commerce. We double our dues each year. Mm-hmm. We do a lot of in-kind charitable services for not only chamber events, but for all city events. And the other thing that a lot of people don't recognize about CR&R, but we've invested in real estate within the city limits over $5.5 million. Mm-hmm. $5.5 million in the city limits we've invested. That's not only our Main Street property, but as your staff knows, we recently purchased 12 additional acres along Dogwood. So we do plan on staying here a long time. We're investing in your community. We're going to build more in your community, and the more we build, the more we're going to hire.
Okay, thank you. Now you wanted to go forward with an introduction and give us a little more details? CR&R totally agrees with the staff report tonight. We've gone back and forth with staff and with your hired consultant regarding the rates. We actually discounted the gate rate over at the South Yuma County Landfill to make this actually a reduction in cost to all of the ratepayers. This project really started about 2 years ago, and some of you on the council will remember about 2 or 2.5 years ago we came to and we said landfill rates are just going out of sight in Imperial County. At that time we were at the $52 range. When we started the contract in the city in 2007, it was $41 a ton. Believe it or not, since 2007, landfill costs locally have gone up 42%. Now, landfill is a large part of the rate that people pay and businesses pay in the city, and that's a pass-through. There's no profit made on disposal. So disposal is whatever it costs us gets passed on into the rates. So had we not started a project about 2.5 years ago and looking at alternative landfill solutions, I believe we would be in front of you tonight with a pass-through of well over 4%, which would be capped at 4%. So instead of asking for 4% tonight, utilizing a local landfill, we have almost a minus 1%. So this project we started about 2.5 years ago, locating another landfill source. We permitted and constructed a transfer station here on East Main Street, as you know, and we're pursuing additional transfer station on property that we've recently acquired. With that, I believe I'll be here for any questions if you would like any questions. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The public hearing is still open, ladies and gentlemen. Anyone else wishing to come forward and speak to the issue? Okay. I wanted to add another component to the presentation made by our staff as well as Mr. Ruffin from CR&R. Several years ago, we did negotiate with CR&R and to cap the rates at the 4%. And what we were hopeful of, and now we realize it was materialized, and actually seeing it can never go higher than the 4% for the duration of the contract, but we see a reduction. So I think this is something that the citizens of El Centro should be quite pleased with. Recognizing, Mr. Haas, your concerns, and I appreciate those concerns, and I don't know that we'll ever be able to get it to zero, but we are doing the best we can to make sure that they will not increase in a way that it would make it too onerous for all of us. So is there any additional individual who wish to come forward and speak to this issue? It is a public hearing. You may do so on either side of the issue, which means you can speak in favor or against. Seeing no one else come forward?
May I?
Yes, you may.
Can I say here?
No.
No, you need to come to the microphone, please, and you need to state your name and address for the record, please, ma'am.
Thank you.
Now we're talking about item 14 on our agenda.
Thank you. My name is Juanita Kronsky, and I'm a resident here. And thank you for the opportunity to say something real quick.
Okay. Mrs. Crosby, Mr. Hagan, would you mind pulling that? Yes, thank you.
And I'm not a public speaker, so I'm sorry. Just be patient with me. And thank you, members of the council. I have several concerns right now. I don't know if the rest of the audience agrees with me. One of the concerns I have is right now, Imperial County holds the country's highest unemployment rate. If I remember, I think it was mentioned, quoted between 26 to 28%. We are in the process of, I work for the state of California, Centro State Prison. We're in the process of realignment. We're in the process of losing a lot of staff members. And our unemployment is going to increase, unfortunately. We have a lot of people that don't even have jobs right now. And I'm concerned for everyone who's trying to pay their bills. And even though that increase does not seem like a big rate, it is, especially for people that are counting their dollars and all that. The other concern I have about that is my understanding was that there were supposed to be notices sent out.
I'm
I
sorry,
think you're
Ms.
maybe on
Crosby.
the
We're
wrong.
talking about CR&R, which is trash.
Are they going to raise the rates? Is that what-
But the trash, the rates are going down a little bit for the trash. Now, if you want to talk about item 15,
Oh, it's another item.
it's another
So I
item.
have to wait till that one. I thought it was the same one.
No, it's
I'm
not.
sorry.
That's okay. Well, just save your comments and
To
for the next.
15? I
Yes.
apologize for that. I
No
thought this was the
problem.
one.
No problem.
Okay. Don't come to these meetings often, so it's, sure. Okay, then I'll wait for the next one.
Thank you. Seeing no one else come forward, let me restate. We're talking item number 14 on the agenda, which is request for an annual rate adjustment for solid waste recycling. Seeing no one else come forward, we'll close the public hearing. Oh, you have a question, Mr. Silva?
Yes, I do. I do want to talk about Mr. Haas's comment, and I think it's a very important comment in that we should not and we do not accept reports from entities at face value, and that they do in fact go through an internal review process to validate the information, or in some cases challenge that information. So I don't know if Mr. Hagan or Mr. Duran, but can you kind of go over the process that we undertook, and in fact some of the numbers that were initially submitted were in fact modified or challenged or discussed or negotiated to ensure that the accuracy of the numbers and that the citizens get the best deal possible.
That's correct. Every rate increase that has occurred in this contract, there was an initial request. Staff reviewed it, and then we have a consultant, HF&H, that initially helped us with the original contract, writing the contract language. And so they review these rate increases, and every time we've had either the rate increase has been reduced, or in this case, it's actually a rate reduction. So we do go through this very detailed.
Okay. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. What's the pleasure of the public hearing is now closed. What's the pleasure of council for item number 14? It's approval of resolution number 97, resolution of the City Council of the City of El Centro conditionally rescinding resolution number 11-110 and reestablishing rates for the collection, transportation, recycling, processing, and disposal of solid waste. Moved by Jackson, second by Solomon. Ballot, please.
Let's read out.
Okay. Come on.
The motion carries 4-0.
Mr. Jackson would like to comment regarding the action we just took.
Yeah, just to also address Mr. Haas's concerns. I met with our city manager today, and to kind of reaffirm what my colleague said, Mr. Efren Silva, they did go through these numbers, and they did find a reduction when initially CRNR had asked for a increase. I wish we had a decrease for everything, roll-off included, but in this economy and with certainly the increases in fuel and services that the provider has, I'm certainly glad to see an overall reduction for our citizens, and that's why I supported it. So just want to let you know.
The public hearing is closed, Mr. Haas. Now, you will have another opportunity to comment if you wish, but it'll be later on in the meeting. Okay, thank you. We're ready for item number 15, and I think this is the one that the young lady came forward on. It's a Proposition 218 public hearing to consider the proposed rate increase for city water and wastewater services and approval of the water rate study. We will have the presentation by staff.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. As I go through this presentation, as questions come up, I may defer them to the finance director or David Dale from Dynamic Engineering, who did the overall rate study report. The data inputs came from, I'll go down the list here. Public Works, we provided the operating expenses, the impact of new regulations, and the capital projects. And then Finance Department had inputs of the necessary reserves, the debt service, payment on bonds, entrance income, and then any changes in income. And then Dynamic Engineering did the overall rate study report and the spreadsheets with all this information. Excuse me. So why is a rate study needed? Well, we need to evaluate the financial health of the water and wastewater funds. These funds are separate funds that are based strictly on the cost of operating these both the water and the wastewater plants and distribution systems and collection systems. We need to provide funds that are needed for new regulations as they come up and require more testing and sampling, and provide funds for loan obligations and coverage of debt ratios. Provide funds to meet city financial goals, and provide stability in rates for residents. Why the increases now? Well, the last rate increase was in July 2009, and our current revenues do not match the current needs. Operational costs for supplies and materials have continued to increase. Reserve funds were used up after the 2010 earthquake, and reserve funds need to be replenished. Okay, I'll go through the water and then the wastewater after.
Thank you.
The proposed rate increases, this is a pie diagram that shows the distribution. 35% is due to increased reserves. The need to increase the reserves, they're down. Next is 24% for the debt service, 23% for capital outlay projects, and lastly 18% for increased operating expenses. Now this is the history where we've had rate increases before, and the last time I came before council on this issue on the rate increase was back in 2005-2006 timeframe with John Lau, and we had not come before you in several years. It had not been a rate increase, and if you look, if we look at the top line here, we can see the rate increases that we had to implement then. We were way behind doing rate increases, and we had as high as 22.3% in one year. Another year we had 19% in 2008, and 13% in 2006, and 13.8% in 2007. So this was basically a result of not really doing a rate study in quite some time. Okay, this is the proposed rate increases that we have here out of this study, and they're the same increase every year for the next 5 years, 4.6%. Wastewater, this is the distribution of what the rate increase is depended on, and the majority, 62% 2% is to increase the reserves. After the earthquake, we used all the reserves. Next is the capital outlay projects at 13%, then 11% for increased operating expenses, and then 7% for both reduction in interest income and reduction in miscellaneous income. Again, this is the history back in 2005 where we brought the rate increase forward. We had 2007 we had a 15% increase. 06 we had a 9%, and then 6% in 06. Excuse me. It would have been 06 and 05 would have been 6%, and then 4% in 08 and 09. The proposed rate increase here over the next 5 years is 6.2, and it's the same for the next 5 years. Okay, how do our rates compare with other cities? Okay, we have the monthly water bill here, the monthly sewer bill, and then the total bill. And this is based on a typical usage of 14,000 gallons per month for single-family dwelling. And we have our existing rate here and our current rate. So the total of the two, water and sewer, is $96.73. And if we compare it with the different cities here, and we have an average down here as well. So we've got Heber here. Basically, we're a little bit over them, basically about the same. Calexico, we're over Calexico. Raleigh, slightly under. And then we've got some other water districts outside the area. This is Otay. And then Imperial, our neighboring city, it's 106. And I want to point out, Imperial just passed a rate increase of 22.28% in 1 year. And they have a tiered rate, and they had a rate increase for the higher usage, if you use more than the average, of 55% increase. So they've had some huge rate increases there that implement next year. Okay, going down, Hopeville, we're slightly above Hopeville. Calipatria, way below. They're awful high. Westmoreland, $70. They're still low. And then Sealy, 97. Basically, we're slightly under Sealy. And way under Escondido and Carlsbad. And way under the average. Questions?
Any questions for Mr. Hagan at this time? I think at this point we do have several slips, and certainly I will honor anyone who wishes to come forward and speak because I understand there's a lot of passion regarding this issue. But I want to acknowledge the fact that when we sent out our notices, we sent them out, unfortunately, in English only to our mailers. We did publish them in English and Spanish. Now, it has been suggested or requested by a colleague that because of that, we might want to continue this so that we could republish it in Spanish, or in both languages, so that we will not have anyone with a misunderstanding of what we're trying to accomplish here. Having said that, we still have an opportunity for those who have signed these slips and wish to come up and present some public testimony. In the event that you will not be here the next time, you may do so. Even if you will be here the next time, you still can come forward and make presentations tonight if you choose. But I think at this point the council would be leaning toward a continuance of this issue. So anyone here, I have your names. Juanita Crosby, if you wish to come up. Mr. Ferraro, if you wish to come up. I would suggest you start working your way toward the front. Jessica Tague, is it Tague? Gil Perez, and John, is it Dupart? Okay. Now we will take your testimony. I hope you understand that this item will undoubtedly be continued. We want to make sure that all residents will have it in a language that they're most comfortable with. And since there was an oversight on our part, it went out in English only through the mailer. So if you'd like to proceed with your comments now.
I'm sorry that I came here before the item. I apologize for that. I'm just going to finish up, sorry, and I think you basically answered my concern. My concern was that I was looking at the demographics of El Centro. According to what I found is that in El Centro, 74.6% of people are of Hispanic or Latino origin. And my concern was, like you just said, that a lot of them may not have received this information. Some of them may not have bought the paper. I didn't know until one of my coworkers told me. And that was my concern, and I was kind of concerned that I worried when I heard that that the Spanish translation was available at the city clerk's office, but that information didn't go out, and people were not told that this was available at the city clerk's office. So that was my concern. But I think that you are addressing that, and I applaud you for that. I really do. I think this is an issue that it affects a lot of people, and we're going through difficult times, and there's a time and a place for things. I'm not sure that this is the right time to implement this new rate, but I appreciate you giving me the time to voice my concern.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you.
Okay, the next person that I called. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Jessica Teague, and I'm a local El Centro resident and property owner. I thank you for reconsidering and tabling this item.
No, it's not
not
tabled.
tabling. I'm sorry. Putting it on the next for the next meeting. I was a person who called 2 weeks ago and brought it to the attention of the city clerk that it was not provided in Spanish, seeing that some of my neighbors are primarily Spanish speakers and do not necessarily read fluently in English. So with Mrs. Crosby, I thank you for that. However, I would like to move forward in reading my statement of opposition to this. I formally submitted my opposition to the proposed rate increases that pertain to the water and wastewater services for the city of El Centro. After a review of the Proposition 218 notification rate update, I request that the council vote to oppose the rate increases for the following reasons. Number one, the proposed water and sewer rates would prove excessive for property owners over the 5-year period during a time when our local, state, and national economy continues to experience strain and future financial challenges. I myself being a public school teacher and have not seen an increase in my salary in the last few years. The notification fails to provide clear and specific explanation of how rates will recover all costs and of which portion of funds will be attributed to the operations, maintenance, debt services, and cash capital outlays as presented in the PowerPoint presentation. Residents deserve descriptive explanation that proves the transparency in the use of additional funding that is generated from our public. Number three, the notification was sent to property owners again. However, residents received the information in English only, thus failing to properly inform residents whose language is one other than English, and I thank you for considering this. Number four, the council is asked to vote on the issue during the summer season, a time when residents travel outside of the Imperial Valley. Therefore, I request that the council for the city of El Centro vote no to the proposed water and sewer rate increases for the reasons as stated, and direct the city management to reevaluate budgetary plans to meet any future needs. To impose significant and excessive rates increases upon property owners would create further financial hardships for local property owners, including myself. With that, being that it was a little short notice, I did, with the aid of my family and some neighbor friends, I did go to some of our residents of El Centro, knocking on their door in the heat of July, and I was able to present the notice to some of our property owners, specifically property owners, because that's what the notice indicates. And I would like to present a petition of opposition that includes 71 signatures of other local residents who oppose this as well. And I thank you for your time and consideration.
You will provide those names to our city clerk, please?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you have a question, Mr. Silva?
I just want to make sure that we clarify something. Mr. Duran, given the likely direction from the council to renotice our community, when would you project or foresee that the continued hearing will take place?
And I'll give a little explanation of why the date I'm going to provide is if we're going. I would also be recommending that we do another direct mailing, and because that direct mailing takes a little longer, is that we would bring this back no sooner than it. Well, we would probably go to the first meeting in October, because of making sure the language, everything was translated properly, any taking consideration of the comments received here, and then renoticing in English and Spanish newspapers, as well as the English-Spanish direct mail out to the resident, to the property owners, and to the bill payers associated with this. That's why it's such a long date out. There is a mailing process that has to occur, and that's why I would recommend that we go. It would be continued to the first meeting in October.
Thank you.
There's an additional question at this time from Mr. Jackson.
I just had a question for our city clerk. Was the petition signed and is it valid as far as all the requirements of names, addresses, and such?
The petitions that were received
Yes.
right now?
I just for the benefit of the person that's submitting it, I want to make sure that if they are going to go through the trouble of doing it, that we make sure that the direction from staff is correct.
The petition, recall under the statute, allows for property owners and individuals directly responsible, or individuals directly responsible for the payment of the water or wastewater bill. So that's why when you indicate is it valid, it has to be one of those two categories.
And I would assume they'd have to have their address and
we would
Whether
compare
or
it
not
against the
you
water
can
bill.
make that determination today, I don't know. Are you able to
I'm not
do
asking
that?
for you to validate them. I just the format, I guess, is what I'm asking about that they're using.
The format seems to be okay. I'm noticing lines where residents or property owners did not sign it. They just printed their name. And I'm questioning whether that would be a valid protest from that individual.
So they would need to have their name printed, their address, and a signature.
A signature.
Right.
So for your benefit, and anybody else that's looking to gather signatures, I think it's our responsibility to notify the residents and clarify that you're going to need names, addresses, and signatures.
If you're going to respond to the question, yes, ma'am, please come forward. Mr. Ferraro, thank you so much.
When I contacted the city clerk's office, they indicated that I did need the name, the property, it had to specifically be the property owner, their address, and a signature. I may have missed a signature or two, but I can take back the petition and easily get those signatures and more by the next meeting, if I may.
If I may,
It might be best to start over, leave these here and start. Yes, Mr. Duran.
is that because you're continuing the hearing, any protests that are filed at this time will be good, so they don't have to start over again. One of the benefits of continuing is no reset. We just continue receiving the information.
These names and addresses, signatures, or printing will stand as you presented them. That does not mean they'll be counted, but they will stand as you presented them.
Okay.
If you have some additional ones you would like to gather, then now you would want to make sure that those that you're gathering the information from understand a signature is required.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And is there a number that's been established by city staff for the threshold for protest?
That'll be established through the city clerk's office on the number of rate accounts. And I think that rate account is.
You have to match the accounts.
Well, we've actually approximately a little over 8,000 accounts.
I'm sorry?
We have a little over 8,000 accounts.
So they have to have 50% plus one?
Right.
So roughly 4,000 signatures?
The idea for general discussion, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, now that, I don't know if the people in the audience understood the discussion that was taking place between the city manager and my colleague, Mr. Jackson. What number of signatures constitute a threshold? There's about 8,000 ratepayers in the city of El Centro. So you need 50% plus 1. Okay? 50% plus 1. I'm not sure. I'm seeing something come forward from our finance director. Ms. Salcido, do you wish to add or clarify any points that I've made? Oh, answering a question from Mr. Hawes, do you have a question? Your question, we will get to you a little later in the meeting, if you don't mind. Or did she answer your question to your satisfaction? Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Ferraro.
Thank you. Resident Richard Fierro, 385 Eucalyptus Avenue, El Centro. Honorable Mayor Sanders and Council. I'm here not in favor of this increase in the water and sewer, and for some of the same reasons the lady just spoke on. After 5 years, that would be 25% on the water, be 35% on the sewer, and it would increase it that much. The other reasons I have is that I don't think we have the support of the community as far as our wages going up to keep up with this, to support that increase. City staff, I believe, botched the notice of public hearing.
That's a pretty harsh term, Mr. Ferraro.
I know it is a harsh word, but I
That's
said
a harsh
botched,
term.
but it wasn't intent to you. It was intent to the people that put it together.
Well, it's an oversight, so
Okay,
we're going
okay,
to
it's an
correct that.
oversight, so I
Okay, thank
apologize.
you. Thank you.
And the reason I say that is because tenants were not mentioned in this flyer. And they used customer, they used everything else. I got on the website and I found it at the bottom on the website. That means that everybody would have to have a computer. Now, when it was mail, we all have mail. We all get mail. So it would have been in a mail, would have been fine if it said that, but it was never put there. So tenants were never included. And if you look at the code, you follow this thing all the way down, Prop 13, it's there. We're supposed to have it. The other thing about the English, that disenfranchised 48% of the people, I believe. The other thing was the English, Spanish, English only, 80% of the people were disenfranchised. And in the code, there's also language on that. Languages or languages other than English. I believe that the rate for the commercial users is much disproportionate to the residents. And I wish staff would look at that a little closer. We got the storm drain issue. We got the tank water thing that might be coming up. We got the trash thing. All these 3 items here could raise our bills even higher. Lastly, well, not lastly, but our residents of Imperial Valley have been saving water, and yet our bills are going up. I'm not here to oppose the increases at all. I'm urging that the council stop and look at the increases more closely before making a decision that would impact our community in such a way that would put a life-saving resources out of the reach of some residents.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, did you fill out a slip for me? I did. But please fill one out, Tony. Mr. Perez, you wish to come forward, please? Again, those who wish to have testimony, you may fill out a slip, or you may reserve the time until we hear this again, after it's going to be properly noticed in 2 languages. Okay. The slips are located in the rear of the room. They're blue. You may fill out a slip. We have some staff in the rear of the room that would help you with that process. Mr. Perez, please.
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. The rates as shown in the percentage increases are, I believe, a little bit misleading. They're simple percentage increases instead of compounded increases. When you combine all the rate increases over the four years, we're talking about and you compound them, you're talking about a 52% increase over a 4-year period. That's a substantial amount of increase for both water and sewer. The water is shown there. I don't know where he got those doggone rates. I wish I could pay that for my water rate, because my water rate is almost double that amount, or more than that. It always is, because I like to keep my lawn nice and green. It indicates in some of your reports that the average gallons per use has dropped substantially for your city, for El Centro, and that's true. Did you ever wonder why? That's because a lot of people are, in this times of economic stress, are doing away with not watering their lawns. You can just go around the whole city, you can see a lot of dry lawns. And next year you'll probably see mine the same way. Because if I have to cut, I'll cut first the lawns before I cut the normal water consumption for family use. And if you go around and ask, I almost guarantee you there's nobody going to tell you, yeah, I want a rate increase. Also, in reviewing some of your information, especially in your expenditures, it said that some of them have come down, have remained constant, or have been reduced. So tighten up your belt a little bit more, and maybe you can save a little bit more. Now, yeah, you want to talk?
No, I'm listening to you, sir.
I'm looking at you. And let's see. I don't think that there's anybody that can say there's nowhere to reduce expenses. I was looking at some of the figures in your reports. The general and administrative expenses are substantially high. How about cutting some of those? Because I know for a fact that the city usually dips into those to reimburse the general fund for operating expenses. Now, if you don't, I apologize, but I've been told in the past that they have done that. I don't think you should be doing that, because you have their own staff on these enterprise funds, which is the water and the sewer. The city shouldn't be dipping into those to get reimbursed for something that they're not even doing, covering expenses other than maybe housing the staff. But the percentage I bet you is higher than what they cost the city. So I say look at overall your expenses and see where you can reduce expenses and keep the rates down. The people here, as your report indicates, in an area that is high unemployment, one of the highest percentage of people on welfare, and yet the statistic that you use to get grants and everything with the federal and state government, you forget when you're trying to raise your own funds. I can't understand that situation. You always quote these statistics, but you kind of forget or look to the side when it's you that are asking for rate increases. These are substantially high, too high. And the way they were presented, they were simple rate increases, not compounded rate increases. When you compound them, you take what you had this year and then 11% or 6% or 4% the next year. That includes already a 4%, not just on the original amount. So it compounds. And that's why I say if you do your math, you will find out that over a period of the 4 years, it's going to be substantially more than what you're indicating. And to say that your water bill is $45 on the average, I'd like to get that water bill, because mine is double that, more than double that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. DuPont?
Evening, Madam Mayor, gentlemen and ladies. I do not have a bunch of words to say. All I got to say is I oppose a rate increase, and I believe that we should all try to come to an understanding concerning this matter about water and sewer.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Waddell? Richard Rydell. Mr. Waddell, do you wish to speak? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Dick Waddell. I live at 1780 Sandalwood. I've lived most of my life in the city, worked here and got educated here, and I've retired here. And I would like to not necessarily oppose the rate, but I would like to caution you and remind you a few things. First of all, I respect the council and the staff's task they have here for them of providing water and sewer service, at the same time not making us poorer and poorer, at least only to the extent you have to. My concerns were raised when it was first announced that you were considering raises in the rates, and so I pursued a copy of the report, which I received. I thank you very much, and read it, and it's quite voluminous, and I assume you've glanced through it yourself. And I have to be honest, I didn't understand everything that I read there, and it was so I was looking forward to maybe getting an executive summary. I used to be in this business, and we always added an executive summary after we put volumes and volumes of numbers and figures together. I always put an executive summary in the front for the average layman to read and understand. And that's not easy for that report. It's a thick report and complex. I approached the city manager about that, and he said, well, the executive summary would come out in your package, which I got today. I got a copy of that today. And that, too, still did not address the concerns I have. It seems that over the next 5 years, you're going to be adding on the water and sewer, about $4 or $5 million worth of new collection. Now, that's a lot of money. But I can understand, too, we've had an earthquake, we have bad economic times, and you've got things to do, and it takes money to do them. But why can't we have the ratepayers a simple explanation of where that $4 or $5 million is going to go? I mean, is it going to replace the reserves? Yes, because the reserves were depleted by the destruction of some of our water and sewer facilities. But how much is it going? How much of that $4 or $5 million is going to reserves? And at what level do you want to build the reserves up to? By the end of the first 5-year period, are we going to have more than we need, or do we have the same as when we started on Easter a couple years ago? I mean, where is it going to stop as far as the reserves go? Otherwise, how much of that $4 or $5 million is going to go into the reserve? How much of that money, and also the question of, I don't know if we've applied for assistance from the federal government for reimbursement of those fees or those costs of the earthquake or not. And I'm wondering, would that issue be addressed somewhere? It should be in your packet. It should tell you.
Let me answer that for you. Yes, we have applied.
Yes, and so
we've applied through FEMA, and as you well know, we were declared a disaster area, and we qualified for that during Schwarzenegger's administration as governor. It was also made the same observation by the Obama administration in Washington. Congress appropriate the funds, and thus far none have been appropriated to handle the cost.
Okay, so that has not been factored into this.
We've factored it in, but the money hasn't come forward.
So it has been factored in these rates?
It has been factored in, but the money has yet to be realized.
So if a Republican gets elected, we might not see it? Is that what you're saying?
Mayor, if I may...
No, Mr. Waddell, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, I think we hear from yourself and those who have spoke before you, the difficulty that this community is experiencing economically. We recognize, because this city sent several millions, well, $1 million plus to the state as a result of RDA. We recognize the dilemma the federal government has because it too says it doesn't have any money. We all recognize that. So what I was trying to say, I have no idea. It's maybe the better way to describe it, the checks in the mail. Unfortunately, I hope it's not like the letters we sent out, which never got translated into Spanish. So we're going to have to redo it. So maybe they'll redo it at some time and give some consideration and appropriate some funds for us.
I understand.
Thank you.
Then also, I can understand a certain amount of that money is going into maintenance, repairs, and personnel. I'd like to know how much of that is going to be. Now, this is how much of that additional money is going there. We know you have expenses that are pretty level, personnel, repairs, and that kind of thing, although you might have put off some of the capital improvements that you wish you could have done. Also, debt service. How much is actually going to debt service? I mean, I understand, I think I heard a number of 24% or something like that was going to debt service. But if that's the case, fine. I'd just like to know how much of that money is going there. Capital improvements. How much money is going to capital improvements? And so I would feel more comfortable if I could understand the needs in dollars terms. I mean, comparing to the other cities and stuff, every city's different. I mean, there's no way of knowing whether they're making money or losing money on their raid services. So I would like to see just how much of this money we need and where is it going to go over that 5-year period. And you're right, the fees are out actually 4.6%. They're 25% when you get all said and done at the end of the 5 years. Now, it would seem to me that before the council could consider whether this is a good fee, they'd have to have a lot more information than I got from the study. I mean, these things I think you need to know so that you can make an honest opinion. And I'm not saying maybe it should be higher, but I think you need to know this information before you can make an informed
decision?
Informed decision, that's the term. Yeah, I'm just not up with these modern terms.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir.
And then we need to you need to know whether there's any flexibilities in any of these costs. Like some things aren't flexible. I mean, your maintenance and repairs, you can't put those off. Your reserve, how big reserve do you want? I mean, I know if I were on the city staff, I'd like to have about all the reserve I can get. Well, these are hard times. They're hard times for you, and they're hard times for us too. So we're in this together, and you, the council, are our only defense between, an overkill that is at our cost. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We'll move forward. I'm sorry, you have a question?
Ruben, is the numbers that we have here, are these public? A lot of the questions that
that was a quick estimate. My staff, not our finance staff, our public works staff, I used that almost script sheet when somebody asked, well, what would be the impact of different estimates? And again, those are not numbers that we don't say, well, how much would 5% be, what 4%? But that was before some discussion occurred that I've heard individually from you that we probably would want to republicize this. So really, that's almost a moot point.
Yeah, I know I got several phone calls regarding very similar questions to the gentleman that just spoke. maybe we could do a better job of
Yeah, so it's really was a draft that we put together this morning, because that question is, well, what if it was this percentage, what was that percentage? And I think it's in our next mail out, we're going to have to have more information, as much as we can get into stuff into an envelope and still make it to the mail.
So we would be looking to include that information in the next mailer?
Well, it would be noticing that information be available at the clerk's office, because again, when we start culling information, it would be as like, what did you leave out? What do we leave out?
What may I, excuse me, Mr. Durant, what I would suggest.
Sure.
Everyone has come forward with a very valid reason why we should look at this more carefully.
Sure.
And we appreciate your comments. But what I would suggest, first I would like to remind the council that when we had our budget hearings, these were comments that were made by our finance director as to the details. Unfortunately for members of the audience, many of you were not present during that time. So at our next hearing, we will have just a schematic and a slight review, if you don't mind, Mr. Duran, from our finance director to go over these numbers with you. I think it would at least bring forward the rationale behind what we are trying to accomplish, the rationale and reason for an increase, not only the reason but the need for the increase, and where we're trying to move this city forward. Mr. Waddell, you brought up some very valid points. You understand for a growing community there are certain infrastructure needs. Infrastructure is the only thing that sometimes does not get seen but costs a lot of dollars. Wastewater and water, streets, roads are very expensive, high-ticket items. But they all combined improve our quality of life. So if Mr. Duran, if you would not mind, providing us that extra assistance through Mrs. Salcido's office to give just that couple of frames that we had, slides that we had before, regarding what it's going to take to actually accomplish what we need in order to sustain and have the sufficient funds available. The earthquake was not a very good thing for any community in Imperial County. And so, does that mean that we're all struggling? Yes, we are. But I appreciate your comments. I understand the pain, because if this council makes a decision, whichever way it makes it, we too will be affected. We too and our families will be affected. Mr. Jackson?
And I agree with the mayor. I would just like to see us make that extra step. I mean, we know some of these numbers. I think that we know that by statute, because of our bond issue, we have to maintain a minimum reserve, and we know what that number is. It's not a floating number. I think that that's something that can be included. There are some hard numbers. There's certainly a lot of soft numbers that fluctuate due to things that can be unforeseen. But I think our hard numbers are something that should be published and made aware of. Not everybody is going to be here at the council next time, and I think that just for the peace of mind, I'm sure I'm not the only council member that's gotten many phone calls and many letters and emails. Let's get that information out to the public.
But as we send it forward, one of the things that's most important, information is excellent, but the individual have to be able to read it and understand what's being stated. Mr. Waddell, who acknowledged that he is an engineer, has a great deal of knowledge in this realm, but also felt somewhat that the numbers were overwhelming and too complex, or didn't understand how they fit in. So we'll do the best we can to inform the public and make sure that the information that we're sending forward is not as technical. This is what it is. This is such a technical area. So we want to make sure that the information is not so technical that you can't understand it. And maybe, if possible, we'll consider at the end of this time, before I get too far ahead of myself, I was thinking we may have to have some little town hall meetings to bring people up to speed as to what's happening here.
Just want to add one thing. I did see one of the residents that came to speak to me in my office brought me in essence, an executive summary and
From this rate study?
And breakdown for when the city of Hopeville increased their rates. And although not everybody might understand all of it, it was put together quite well, I thought. And maybe that's something that we could contact Hopeville and look at. It certainly broke down some of the hard costs and explained some of the purposes of moving forward through the next. I think theirs was it might have been a 4-year rate increase, but it really addressed the hard numbers that they had and that they were looking at, something along those lines to the citizens. I think that we certainly want to be transparent and give as much information to the citizens as we can. And this is a tough decision not only for the council, but obviously for the citizens and the residents. Obviously, we are also residents of the city, so we take this decision not lightly. So.
Mr. Solomon? I do have 2 more individuals wishing to speak, but no, go right ahead. You have a question?
Well, I just want to speak.
Sure.
One of the things that the city has tried to do is do a balancing act. To balance the fact that these are hard economic times and people are going through these hard times. As someone said, not only is it the city that's having some hard times, but the residents are too. But one of the things the city has done was try to make sure during these hard times that there were opportunities for work here in El Centro. We just finished a fire station, and most of the people, from my understanding, were residents of El Centro. We just finished the facility at 4th and Main Street. During hard times, we're building. We have a sidewalk program. We have 80% of the streets in El Centro have now been paved. We have a transfer station going up at 7th and State Street. And I can't think of some of the others. I'm sure the other council members can think of those too. But what I'm saying is that even though the times were hard, we did not sit back and say to ourselves that we have some money that we need to hold on to, and we do need to. But at the same time, we were out there trying to make sure that there were residents who had jobs. While we're out there making sure that that's being done, we have some other things that are important. And some of those were talked about tonight. So, it's not just the infrastructure that is needed. We also need to continue to do some of the things that will bring people from other areas into our community and drop off their money before they leave it. And that's one of the things that we also need to do, because it will allow us, once we have these facilities, to have people come in, spend their money, and as a result of that, we can maintain employment, maintain the quality of life that people would like to have and see, and be a part of a community that, even when times are hard, we look out for one another.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments or statements made by any council member at this time? Okay, I will call the next person for it. Is it Juan Amaya? Yes, ma'am. All right.
Thank you for listening to my words. First of all, I'd like to thank the trash department, because they respond every time I call them, and they're as fast as the police department. So compliments to the people from the trash department, trash collectors. I am here to state that I oppose the rate increase based on what everybody has mentioned. These are hard times, okay? And it seems like every year we have been getting a small increase, but at the end, it's a large increase. Second, I oppose to the continuance of the meeting. A decision should be made now. Why wait? Okay, we are all here and we should all be knowledgeable in the English language. If not, we can get our own interpreter. My mother was from Mexico, and everywhere we went or everywhere she took us, we had to do the interpreting. So by the same token, people can get their own interpreter. This is a waste of paper and a waste of time. We need to get going with things. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have one more slip, and that's Mr. Ramos, Tony Ramos.
Good evening. My name is Tony Ramos, a Centro resident. I live right down the road from the man you just spoke. I feel that no matter what it takes, it should be printed. That way there's no cause for alarm, there's no cause for leaving or disenfranchising the people that don't speak Spanish. In all fairness, it's fair to the Constitution of the United States, the Brown Act, and even the Brown Act would call for that, I think. It's necessary. You don't have a choice. So to me, Madam Mayor, is to go ahead and print the information, English and Spanish, and let the people know ahead of time what it's all about. I would recommend that when you make those flyers, that you provide some information about what we saw here tonight, instead of people coming here this day and seeing the PowerPoint of presentations and deciding within a few minutes. That way everybody has no excuse for not knowing what they're voting on. Does the city buy the water from ID at the acre foot of water?
The answer to that question, yes.
And how much do you pay for an acre foot of water?
Oh gosh, I don't have that information.
16? $68.
I have no idea.
$68.
Okay.
And you know, an acre foot of water, because you know, I attend a lot of ID meetings. I was there this afternoon with Mr. Jackson. 68, an acre foot of water, 1 foot high, could sustain, and a family of 4 or 5 can live on that for 1 year, if I'm not mistaken.
That's raw water, Tony.
Pardon me?
I think the water that's coming in as we're purchasing as acre foot is probably raw water.
Yeah, raw water. I'm just saying for benefit of comparing, you know, and I don't know how, I'm not necessarily against this, but this increase, but 55% to me is high. I would say, why not go 15% or 20% or at the most 25%? Let's find out a medium there where we could go and still live with it. Because I think what Mr. Solomon said right now, I enjoy my street. It got paved. I feel like a rich guy now, you know? And it's smooth. I don't hear those trucks bumping down the potholes that used to be there. The sidewalks, it's true. The new fire station. Everything is good about El Centro except the weather, but you know, you live here, you learn to take it. And I say to myself, why isn't it good here, and why is it good in Las Vegas when it's hot also, or Riverside? Well, because there's gambling over, so, but I would recommend let's bring some gambling joints here so we can go out and eat free and do some stuff that they do over there. But really, Madam Mayor, I say that there's nothing wrong with the people pitching in, but I'll tell you one thing. This is a water and sewage rate increase, right? 55%. Look at the difference. Why do we call it a tax increase? There's no difference.
That's why this is a 218 hearing.
Yes, but what I'm trying to say, there's no difference. To me, there's no difference. Where you charge me 55% rate increase or 55% tax increase on my water and sewage, it's still the same. I mean, to me, it's going to come out the same. All I'm trying to make is a point, and I'm not trying to get on the board or your staff. Okay. All I'm saying is still money out of my pocket, no matter how you cut it. Under that program 218, it's true, it is a rating. You can't say tax because people would probably vote all of you out of office if that was the case. But it's called different, and people can live with that. The November ballot is a tax increase. It may not pass, but people don't want to pay their share, even though we see the state being vulnerable. Like that lady said right now, I'm going to vote for it. I'm going to vote for the one in November. That has nothing to do with this, because I feel we have to share the sacrifice, just like we have to share the sacrifice here. I thank God, and I say this, I thank God for allowing me to have worked for the county probation department and allow me to keep on living and giving back to the community. I entered the Air Force in 1966 and got out in 1970. And I learned from living in barracks there. I said, how come those officers that wear the little clips here, how come they live better than I do in air conditioning little rooms? Because they went to college, Ramos, and you didn't. That's what I did. I went to IVC, went to San Diego State, got my degrees, worked for the probation department, and here I am. And to me, even though I didn't go to Vietnam during that time because I was in the Air Force, I'm very proud to have served and I would have gone there like that because I was only 19 years old. Kind of dumb and just go wherever you want, I would have gone. Just like my other friends that got killed over there. And those are the sacrifices who we live for now. Because their parents and their nieces, their sisters are living now, and some of them are fighting back on me right now. So we should be happy to live in a country that there's freedom, that we can live by the Constitution, that we can live by the Brown Act, that we can come here and talk to you people, and we're not going to get shot when we leave.
Okay, Tony, do you have some additional things about our...
What I'm trying to say, Mayor and Madam, is that the water increase is okay, but it's just too much at this time.
Okay.
And to me, you know, if you buy the water at $68 an acre foot, you know, and an acre foot of water, raw water, can sustain the family of 4 or 5 for 1 year, you're still making money on the water they sell us. Granted that you have to treat the sewage, they have to treat the water, that the water has to be transported and all this. But you know, my trash cans, I don't fill my trash cans of weeds and recyclable, because the recyclables I sell, and I hardly want to cut the grass. But at the same time, the ones we feel more as the ones food. That's why I have to buy all the food for my family. You know, so if that was a case, I'm trying to say, well, CR not shouldn't charge me for the times they don't pick up my weeds and grass or my recyclables, but that's not going to be, they charge me a flat fee.
Okay, but Tony, you're deviating a little bit here now. Come back and
all I'm trying to tell you,
Madam
Mayor, is that I don't even think you guys know whether you should increase this rate right now. I see Mr. Jackson's concerned. I see Mr. Silva, Mr. Solomon too is concerned about it. And what I'm trying to say about all of this, that I say, this is about us speaking what we want to, not what you want to. Well, with all due respect.
Well, that's exactly why we're having this public hearing.
And if and when you say, well, finish, you have to let me speak. You have to let me finish, because I'm speaking, and I'm not trying to really impress you or anybody else. I'm trying to support what the facts are about the people. And that's why when I finish, I'll put everything together. But the thing is...
But you're bringing it to closure,
yes,
correct?
sir. Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
Thank you.
And what I'm trying to say is that as a city council, I'm not here to put you guys down, especially your staff, because they work hard.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I had an issue with my sewage line one time across the sidewalk, and they were there within an hour at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I got no problem with that. All I'm trying to say is that bring out the information to the public. Put it in writing, both in English and Spanish. Make it fair. Send the information that you had here. Send it to the flyers and to the public between now and October. You're going to do that. Sometimes when we see you and we see a little hesitance in your faces, we wonder, well, they're going to vote on it, and they don't know, then how can we support you? You know, you should be concerned and persuaded that when you come here, you know exactly what you're going to say and do, because the public may not know that. You're the people that we lean on. You're the ones that we support. And like I said, you know, part of this whole issue is that, let's see, is that water and wastewater issues are incumbent supposedly on the public. Yes, they are, because we use those. But at the same time, the increase to me is too high. Find a medium ground, something where it could be less, because If it was a tax increase that was 55%, we wouldn't want it, but you call it a raise, a water raise and a sewer water raise, it's different. To me, it's the same. So I'll leave it with that. And I just had one more question, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with this. A few years ago, I sponsored In God We Trust at the IID. You've seen it. I thought that you guys had passed it too.
Well, you're correct, Mr. Ramos. We did, and it'll be forthcoming.
It's been 2 years already.
I know it, but it's
And
going to
all
be forthcoming.
all I can say, without putting anybody in the spot, you shouldn't let God wait.
Well, it's going to be forthcoming.
2 years. Don't let God wait. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That completes the testimony that we had blue slips for. So I'm assuming everyone has had their say. And those that did not, listen to the others that did. As I stated earlier, that we would hear your testimony, but because it did not go out in the English-Spanish version, that this will be continued. I'm going to be looking to the city attorney to ask her if that is a possibility that we can just continue this and renotice and then come back. Mr. Duran made reference to
First regular meeting of October.
First
The city
regular
clerk
meeting
can
in
give you that date. October 2nd.
Okay, October 2nd.
Do we need a motion for that?
Yes, we will need a motion to continue.
I'll make the motion, but I do want to thank the mayor and the council for agreeing with my recommendation that we continue this item and be able to allow proper noticing to the community. I think that we have a moral obligation and a responsibility to make sure that our citizens are informed of the actions that the council will take that is going to have an impact on their lives. So I appreciate that gesture from my colleagues in the council. I've listened a lot, and I have to agree with Mr. Waddell and Tony Ramos and a few other people in that when it comes to the next meeting, some of the information, some of the data, some of the explanations that were requested need to be provided. I think that we need to be able to justify to people the rate increases, where they're going, why are they necessary, is there some flexibility to be able to delay capital improvements or some additional modifications. And I have to be convinced, and hopefully the public will also be convinced that in fact we are not increasing any more than what we have to for the betterment and for the future of our community. So I agree with the comments that were stated earlier, and again I appreciate my colleagues' agreement to continue this item.
I'll second.
So that's the motion.
Okay, it was moved by Mr. Silva and second by Mr. Jackson that this item be continued. Ballot, please. And it'll come back our second meeting in first meeting in October. All of those of you who have testified tonight, it will be recorded. However, if you choose to come back, you're welcome.
Maybe a recommendation. I know that there's a lot of information that we can't mail everything out, but maybe a notation for a link to the website where we could get the rest of the information on?
We'll use our website and our social networking site.
Okay.
As well. Thank you. You want to?
Yes. For those we will be taking a 5-minute break. I know there's some here for items 16 and 17. We ask that we take a 5-minute break for personal privileges. We thank you all so very much.